of the Layfamilyyarn diaries. My name's Kelly and this is my little video where I talk about all my crafty hobbies, always knitting, rarely crochet and occasionally dressmaking and quilting. I hope you're all well. If you've been here before, I hope you've had a lovely week since we spoke last. It's lovely to see you again. And if this is your first time joining us, you're so very welcome. I hope you enjoy what you see and choose to stick around. So how are you? It's just been a week. I mean, that's a rarity for me, isn't it? I hope you've had a lovely week. It's gone by ever so quick here, hasn't it? Strictly Come Dancing has started again since we spoke last, which is just... I'm recording this on Saturday morning, so the live show hasn't been on as yet. I watched the launch party last night, Nick and I, and oh, it was good fun, wasn't it? Have you watched it? That to me is the official countdown to Christmas, and I say it every year to Nick and Megan, my family, and every year I say, oh, Strictly's on, it's countdown to Christmas, and they, you know, roll their eyes and tut at me and say it's too early. And literally in the blink of an eye, we're putting a Christmas tree up and we're like 10 days away. So it really does feel like the countdown to Christmas for me. I've had a nice week. I've had a crafty week. I've had a knitty week. It's been a week of heavy workload. Somebody asked me last week actually where I got the yarn from that I was knitting in my Perec fest, and my husband and I, Nick, we run Layfamilyyarn, our hand dyed yarn business. So typically speaking, the yarn I show on the podcast is usually one that we've dyed, generally speaking. If I don't mention a dyer, that just assume it's ours. So yes, I've got today to show you progress on my Perec vest. I've got a finished object to show you. I've got some lovely things that came in the mail. They came a few weeks ago actually, but I forgot to show it last week. So, and then I've got new knitting plans to talk about with you. So I think, shall we start with the finished thing first? I finished this about 2 years ago. Over 2 years ago. Well, it'll be 3 years this Christmas. It was finished for a Christmas present for Megan, and Megan was going through that phase in her life. I'm sure many of you as mums or dads, grandparents can empathise with. She was going through that phase in her teenage years where all clothes belonged on the floor. Whether they were brand new clothes, old clothes, hand knitted clothes, anything. It didn't matter how many wardrobes she had, everything lived on the floor. And I knitted this jumper for Christmas. She knew I was knitting it, she's seen it, she tried it on, she told me the size that she wanted, the length, and it was completely finished bar the blocking and the weaving in of ends, and there are a squillion ends to weave in, and I just thought, I'm not going to finish this just for you to throw it on the floor and trample on it. That's terrible, isn't it? And I just kept it. I just had no intention of giving somebody a hand knit jumper that would just end up on the bedroom floor. So I popped it away in the cupboard, didn't weave any ends in, didn't block it. I thought one day when Megan's in a new season of life, she'll be worthy of it again. And she is now. She's a lot better. By no means perfect, but a lot better. So I decided to get the jumper finished for this Christmas. And when I say finished, it just needed the ends weaving in. But as you'll see when I show it you now, there are a lot of ends. Here we go. Ta-da! Oh, isn't it lovely? Look at the sleeves. Isn't it fun? I love it. I'm so pleased with it. So this design is the classic Cosy raglan, classic comfy raglan by Jessie Mead Designs, and it is just a very simple top down raglan constructed sweater. But I decided to add in these stripes, these pops of colour, and I just love them. The front and back, this is the other side. Oh, I'm so pleased with them. As you can see, let me come a bit closer. Where I changed colours, there's 10 colours in there, and where I've changed colours, I've just done a slip stitch on that row. I just think it looks so effective. How many rows did I do? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I did a knit one, slip one on the change of colour round. Oh, isn't it lovely? I'm really pleased with it. So as you can see, there's 20 ends there, and then again on the cuffs. I'm so pleased with it. She's going to love it. The jumper pattern is fantastic. It goes, it's much longer than I did. This is a bit more cropped length, but that was the length Megan wanted. I knit it as per pattern, apart from popping in the bits of colour there. This was the second jumper. I'm going to pop it on my shoulder like this, look. This was the second jumper I ever made. The first one being a humorless jumper for my mum, which she loves, and then I made this one for Megan. And since then I've made a couple of other garments, and I'm definitely learning each time I knit something, a garment. One of the things I'm learning about is finishing. So the bind off that I've used on my cuffs, can you see there's no giving them at all? I just did a knitted bind off, and that certainly isn't a bind off that I would use anymore. I would always do a tubular bind off now. I've done that the last couple of projects and really enjoyed that. So yeah, I wouldn't do that. Megan's really petite lady, so that won't matter to her at all, that there's no giving that. She doesn't wash up, so she doesn't need to roll her sleeves up, so we're okay there. And the same on the bottom. It has a little bit more give because I tried to be a bit looser there, but yeah, I wouldn't use that bind off again. When I've woven in the ends, I did most of them. I did 2 or 3 of the colours last time, and I've done the rest this morning. And my finishing technique isn't great on there. It's better now, this morning, when I did them than when I did it last time, but that's just part of our knitting journey, isn't it, and our personal growth and development with regards to our knitting life. And that's something I definitely want to improve upon. Now I'm doing more garments, and I'm certainly more inspired to knit a lot more garments. I am going to definitely practice my finishing techniques, and I'm sure just with anything, the more you do, the more natural it will become anyway. But other than that, I'm really pleased with it. I didn't alternate skeins on this jumper, and I wish I had, because you can see a faint line. It's more obvious on screen than it is in real life, but you can definitely see that halfway down the jumper. Again, that's something I never not do now. I always alternate my skeins. So again, that was just a learning experience. Another thing I would do definitely do different, and again it's something I've learned now anyway from doing other garments, is I would pick up more stitches under the arm to close that gap. The way this jumper has you pick up stitches for the arm, it leaves a hole and then you have to sew that up. Now whether that's my inexperience of sewing up garments under the arms like that, or whether it is just generally the case, it's not as neat as I would like. So I would either need to practice that technique a bit more, or actually just pick up a few more stitches to close the gap. But when it's just hanging, can you see that scruffy underarm stitch? Absolutely not. You know, when the arm's down like that, you're not going to look at that on somebody's body and say, that looks a mess. You won't believe that I've only blocked this morning and it is really dry. That was the reason for picking up this project today and getting it finished, was because it's a beautiful, beautiful day. Lovely warm autumn sunshine, bright blue sky. And I thought, this is my opportunity to get this dry. So I used my blocking board, my new jumper board. I popped it in the garden, in its position, in the sunshine, and it's dried within about 5 hours. I mean, how fantastic is that? And this is a DK weight jumper, a double knit jumper. So yeah, dead chuffed with that. See if I can get a thumbnail. Probably not. So yeah, that's the one comfy cozy raglan by Jessie May Designs. I'll pop all links to the patterns that I talk about in the little description bar below. I love these. So I knit this, it will be 3 years ago, and I bought this jumper 2 years ago, but you can see they're very similar, can't you? Obviously Sainsbury's copied me. I would like to make myself one of these now with a stripy rainbowy raglan like that. I just think it's fantastic. I love it. I'm so pleased with it. And yeah, I definitely want to do myself one, and my mum will want one as well. Oh, let me show you this. Can you see that like little patch there? Oh, I'm so frustrated with that. I went wrong, obviously went wrong somewhere on my short rows, and those stitches have either ended up being overworked or not worked enough in as part of the short rows. Oh, and it's frustrating. I really hoped it would block out, but it hasn't at all, has it actually? I don't know what I can do about that now. I've got some very good friends who are very prolific and experienced garment knitters. I'm seeing them in a couple of weeks, so I might ask them if they've got any advice for me. It looks like I've patched it, doesn't it? So yeah, I'm a bit frustrated about that, but I suspect there's not a lot I can do about it. It's gonna have to go on the back. I think this is actually the front of the jumper, and that is on the front. The back is where I've woven in all my ends, so it to me doesn't look quite as neat. Looks a bit bumpy, but you don't have that ugly patch there. So I don't know, Megan can shove it on which way she likes, can't she? The pattern, I recall, was incredibly well written. That was only the second jumper, as I say, I'd made, and I've made a very wearable jumper, apart from that mistake on the short rows, but even so, it's still a wearable jumper. So that's that one. What else? I've only been working on my Perec vest this week. If you recall, if you were here last week, the Perec vest is by Along Avec Anna, and it's a V-neck tank top, slip over, vest top, whatever you want to call it. It's a fingering weight garment, but I'm choosing to knit mine in undyed lace weight and Surrey alpaca in this sort of dusky pink. I think when we spoke last week I had cast it on, and I'd just started on the front shaping, I believe. Is that right? I hadn't got much done anyway. I've got loads done now. Oh, and I love it so much. Oh, look. This is for me. Oh, I'm so pleased with it. Oh, isn't it lovely? So I've joined in the round now. I'm just going round and round the body. Thank you everyone for all your lovely encouraging comments last week and spurring me on with this project and saying that, you know, we all deserve to feel good in our clothes and to wear clothes that we're proud to be seen in, and especially handmade ones. And to those of you that sent me private messages and, you know, shared your story and your vulnerabilities, I'm so humbled that you felt able to do so and that we could talk some more. So thank you so much for that. I'd never knit a garment, a V-neck before, and you knit it flat until the end of the arm shaping, which was here, and it's quite a lot of knitting before you join in the round. I'd never done a construction like that before, and I just trusted the pattern. I just read it, did it exactly as it said ish, I'll tell you in a minute, and trusted the process. There's plenty of projects on Ravelry that are beautiful, so I knew the pattern worked. And I know people that have knit it and they've said the same, so I just went with it. Now, I did make a mistake. This was one of those projects that I have not been able to put it down. I stayed up till nearly midnight one night because I didn't want to go to bed until I'd finished the one section. And then I woke up early in the morning and I thought, oh lovely, I can have a little knit before work. And when I say early, I'm talking sort of 4:30, but it was just, I couldn't go back to sleep because I wanted to knit. And the mistake I've made is that I was knitting down the one front here, and the pattern says to repeat, you knit rows 1 to 4 and then repeat the last 2 rows however many times, doing these increases down here. I misread the pattern and I repeated all 4 rows however many times. And when I got to the end here of this flap, I counted my stitches and I'd got too many. I just couldn't work out why, because I'd been meticulously making tally charts and, you know, checking off my rows. I couldn't understand why, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to rip back, and I don't like ripping back because I'm not very good at picking up stitches. So I ignored it, moved over to the other side, because I mean, why wouldn't you? You just ignore problems, don't you, at 10:30 at night when you just want to knit. So I moved over to the other side and then carried on there. And then I reached out to a friend and said, if I just mirror the left side with the right side, won't that just be okay as long as they're the same? And she didn't think that would be a problem either, other than obviously I'm going to affect the stitch count numbers when it comes to the armholes and the armhole increases here. So I went to bed, pondered, slept on it, and then in the morning I had a read of the pattern, and when you get down to here, you've got left and right flaps at this point, and you have to do some bridging stitches here to join these 2 difference. Am I making any sense? I do hope so. I'm so sorry, I'm not very articulate at things like this. So yeah, you create some stitches here, and that joins your left front and right front together. So all I did was I did less. I knew what my overall stitch count should be, and I just deducted my additional stitches from the amount I had to cast on, and just cast on fewer. So if I should have cast on maybe 22 or whatever, I cast on 10, which has made for a deeper V and a more dramatic V rather than a rounded neck, and I absolutely love it. For my body shape, and as a woman with larger chesticles, I think a deeper V is really quite flattering. And also the white blouse I've bought with the collar, you'll see a little bit more of it. So yeah, I was dead chuffed. I made meticulous notes at this point because I knew that obviously I was going off track a little bit. So I made meticulous notes so that A, I knew what I'd done, and B, I can do it again if I choose to. Oh, I have no idea if this pattern's going to fit me, suit me or otherwise, but I've got so many plans for so many other colour combinations. I think I said that last week and that hasn't changed. I'm going to stick it on a knitting cord shortly and try it on. I've got some of the, I think they're called barber cords. Got it from Jules of So Sweet Violet, and it's a cord that you stick on the end of your needle. I'm sure you all know this, but if you don't, I shouldn't say that because I didn't know about them until Jules started stocking them and saw it on her Instagram, and then I was like, oh, so I shouldn't say you may all know this because you may not. But you stick it on the end of your needles and it's essentially like an extension cord, so you can just spread out your stitches and try them on. Oh, I love it, love it, love it, love it. It's just playing back. I don't think I'm going to be too far off my hem really, because I want it quite cropped, so it's to go over a long shirt, a long sleeved shirt. But I'm going to try it on, see, and just keep measuring. Yeah, she'll pop it on, have a good measure, get Megan or Nick to measure where I want it, and then I know exactly where I'm at then. Oh, it's so soft. So soft. One of the lovely people I was talking to, oh, before I move on, this is the first ball still of lace weight. Now lace weight's about 800 metres a ball, and that's still the first one. Isn't that amazing? And I'm on my second ball of Surrey. One of the lovely people that got in touch with me last week, we were having a chat about knitting garments for ourselves, and she was so encouraged by the fact that I was knitting for myself, and she completely empathised with what I was saying last week about knitting a jumper for me in my size is a huge investment of resources, that being time and finances. Because of course the larger the garment, the longer it takes to knit, especially in a fingering weight yarn, and it uses more yarn. And whilst that investment is thoroughly worthwhile, you want to have the confidence that it's going to fit, don't you? And what I was saying last week is that up until now the garments, I've only knit myself one, and I had one knit as a shop sample. But those garments, I always had the knowledge that if they didn't fit me, they were a shop sample, that I could use them to show the yarn at shows, on Instagram pictures and things, and it didn't matter if they didn't fit me because they weren't designed for me. They were designed as a shop sample. And that was absolutely a self-defense mechanism, because I wanted these jumpers to fit me so badly. I really, really wanted them. But that self-preservation, that protection system, if I told myself they're not for me, if they didn't fit, I wouldn't feel ashamed or disappointed or embarrassed or angry or any other emotion, because I detached myself from the project. As it goes, they fit beautifully and I love wearing them. And the Perec vest was the first time that I had swatched with absolute intention of creating a garment for me to wear and to feel good in and to enjoy. And my friend and I got chatting about this, and you know, I'm so fortunate that I'm able to buy yarn wholesale and then dye it up for myself and knit a jumper. But of course not everybody has that luxury or indeed inclination. Not everybody wants to dye themselves a sweater quantity of yarn and go from there. So I thought today I would mention a lovely podcast I watch, Davina at the Little Workroom Crafts here on YouTube. I'm sure many of you know her. If you don't, I would really recommend watching her podcast. She's such a lovely lady. She's so bubbly and happy, and she giggles constantly, which makes me giggle, and that can never be a bad thing, can it, when somebody makes you smile? What Davina is fantastic at is she makes jumpers from the most inexpensive yarn, and they look fantastic. She goes to Home Bargains, I think, and gets, I think the yarn's like £1 a ball or £1.50, something like that. It's really inexpensive, and she can make a jumper for herself for like £5 or £6, which is, it's just fantastic, isn't it? It's cheaper than going to Primark. And as a plus size woman, to buy clothes for ourselves is incredibly expensive. So if you use a cheaper yarn, then it may well be that you can knit yourself a jumper for quite little money. So yeah, check out Davina's podcast if you don't already watch it, because she's really inspiring with what she creates from so little money, really. She's been making Whitmore cardigans, and I think she made them for sort of under £10, which is crazy, isn't it? Fantastic. It got me thinking though about what I want to knit next. My plan is to knit next a Felix sweater, which is an Aran weight jumper, I believe. It's a top-down raglan, and it's got herringbone. Is that the right word? Herringbone, I think, on the raglan. It's lovely. It's been out for a while now, and I have ordered at work some Aran weight merino cashmere nylon. Oh, and it's beautiful. Really is lovely. And my intention was to dye some of that for myself and do that as my next jumper. But when I was thinking about how to help my friend and to using more economical yarn, I was where am I going with this? Find your words, Kelly. What I was intending to say was, you can use the more economical yarns, the pound shop yarns, the Aldi yarn, and then hold it together with some of the Surrey alpaca to combine the weight, and then that gives you that little hit of luxury without the whole project being a luxury yarn. And that might be a nice way round of doing things. And I was thinking about the Felix pattern and how you could get a lace weight, an Aran weight. I thought if you got the DK yarn from the Home Bargains and then held it with a Surrey alpaca, because the Surrey alpaca is thicker than a lace weight, you might get gauge. It wouldn't technically be an Aran, but I bet you could get gauge if you adapted your needle size and things. And I thought that was really exciting. And then it got me thinking, in the back of my cupboard, I know I've got a big bag of yarn that I dyed years ago when I was still using a fish kettle on my gas cooker to dye yarn in the kitchen. So we're talking 3, 4, 5 years ago. And I knit this jumper weight of yarn, enough balls to knit a jumper for my mum. I planned on making the heartstrings that was in a Hohi Locatelli pattern way back when. And I dyed the yarn. I had no idea how much yarn I dyed. I just knew I dyed enough for a jumper. I remember casting on a sleeve and then not doing any more. I can't recall why I stopped. The construction was that you did the sleeves first, then you knit the body, joined at the yoke and went upward. And I knit the sleeve and then stuck it on waste yarn, and I haven't done a thing with it since. And I don't remember why, but I do remember having all this yarn. Now, this yarn isn't well dyed. I haven't dyed it well. That wasn't very good English, was it? I dyed this, as I say, about 5.5 years ago, and it was at the very start of my yarn dyeing career. And like all things, you improve over time, and your techniques and your development of colours and your sense of colour management, all that sort of thing comes in time, doesn't it? And at that time, I didn't dye scientifically, in that I didn't weigh things. I would do 1/8 of a teaspoon, 1/2 of 1/8 of a teaspoon, a heaped teaspoon, you know, and that still is how I often dye now for variegated yarns and for speckles and things. But when I want to do a sweater quantity and a semi-solid, a tonal, then I now, or we rather, Nick and I, both weigh the dye powder to sort of 0.01 of a gram. And we measure the depth of water, we measure the temperature of water. So we eliminate as many variables as we can, so we get an accurate, repeatable colour. I didn't do that with this yarn. I think it looks like, going through this bag, I put 3 skeins in a pan, which I would never do now. I would never put 3 skeins in a pan now, but I did then, I think. And the other 3, they look slightly darker. So we've got these 6. They're not loads different, but there are definitely a difference. But I think I can get away with that by alternating skeins. And the other way I can get away with it is by holding some silly alpaca. So I'm going to hold it with some undyed fluff. And that I'm going to swatch for my Felix. Surrey alpaca and mohair to some extent, but Surrey alpaca is my favourite, so I generally use that. It's ever so forgiving because it fills in gaps. It melds the colours together. So where I've got a bit of a dodgy dye batch there, I mean, I would never sell this. Well, it wouldn't happen now. We'd never dye like that now. But this is chalked up to experience, you know. But what it will do is it will mute that colour right down, and it'll just even out all the colour as well, really. But I'll alternate skeins. So I'm going to swatch today or over the weekend for my Felix. It'll be nice to use this yarn. So I've always known it's at the back of the cupboard taunting me. I've also dyed 8 skeins of DK. Now my mum's quite, well, she's not average UK size woman. She's certainly not an 8 skein jumper gal. But that's okay, because I've got 8 skeins. Got a whole bag full. So it was all there taunting me, just waiting to be cast on. What else have I got to tell you? I think that's it for the knitting. I haven't worked on anything else other than my Perec vest. I really want to get that finished. We've got one of our first retreat of the season in October, middle of October, and I'd love to wear it then. So yeah, I've been really focused on getting that finished. I received a really lovely surprise package in the post a few weeks ago now, but I forgot to mention it last week, and I really want to, because the lady's name's Julie. She sent it to work, and so it was a complete surprise and so unexpected, and such a beautiful package to receive. And the card read, "I saw your YouTube video and I have these scraps of Liberty fabric that will never get used, so please enjoy. Love, Julie." So Julie, if that's you, thank you so much. Honestly, I'm absolutely blown away, utterly thrilled to share your treasure with me like that, Julie. Honestly, it means the world to me. Look at these beautiful fabrics. This one, there's quite a lot of this one. I'd love to know what you made with this, Julie. Oh, I'd love to. I haven't been able to thank Julie personally because I don't have a way of getting in touch with her. Look at that one. That's Betsy, isn't it, that one, I think? Oh, it looks like you've had such fun with these, Julie. There's all sorts of lovely colours, purples and blues. Oh, look. Aren't these just absolute treasure, aren't they? Do you know, we as crafters find use from the smallest things, don't we? Next week I'll show you, that was then, it's a neighbour. I've been making a fabric book cover. Look at these. Oh, isn't that one lovely? I've been making, fabric book cover. I finished it, and I made that from some Liberty scraps. So I'll bring it next week and show you. But I might make another one with some of these. Oh, look at that. It's a lovely one. Oh, they're all lovely. And there's so many. I'm so lucky. Look, got a big pile. Oh, I'm so lucky. Julie, thank you. Thank you so much. You're so kind to spoil me. That's so pretty, isn't it? Oh, and these pretty flowers. Look, I'm just going through fabric now. Could just sit and go through them and ooh and ah, and I left them out so I could share them with you and show you before I put them in my little box of Liberty fabrics. So that's all I've got to chatter on about this time. It's been lovely to spend some time with you. Who knows, we might make it 3 weeks running and catch up for another chat next Sunday. But until then, I hope you have a great week ahead. Happy knitting, happy crafting, and we'll catch up very soon. Take care and thanks for your company.